The heart is not a pump. Part 7. Men of limited understandings, in general, find fault with everything which is beyond their comprehension. Age by age, for centuries past, systems and practices that were considered scientific have dwindled away to nothingness as time passed. Today, there are many things that are considered scientific in theories and practices, especially in the treatment of female diseases that must meet with the same fate. There has been a revolutionary action going on in my mind, to which 20 years ago I said, "Stop." It stopped not, but the end is now. If a demonstrator of anatomy will give a natural, rational, and practical solution of the reason why nerves uniformly accompany the arteries and not so uniformly the veins in the human system, which they have failed to do up to time of this publication, I think I can prove on a rational and natural basis that the heart does not circulate the blood, but that the positive and negative electricities generated from the air in the lungs and from them conveyed to the brain, thence distributed through the system to supply the natural demands of the body, circulate the blood, and are the physical life and the motive power of the body, acting in harmony with the spirit life. This may be likened unto the electricity, positive and negative, generated by steam, by water power or other generative power of electricity, the principles of which are attraction and repulsion, push and pull, motive force of power. Everything is kept in motion by as long as the power lasts or until the machinery wears out. So with the body. As long as you take air into the lungs, the machinery of the body will be kept in motion until the machinery is worn out or destroyed by disease or outside influences. Spinal meningitis, congestions and inflammations of the human system can be explained and removed on scientific principles. Will wood and water run an engine without steam? Is not steam the motive power of the engine? Can you force water through a pump without a motive power? Will electric cars run without a motive power? Are not horses the motive power of our streetcars? Can you run or keep in motion any kind of machinery without a motive power of some kind? Is not the world kept in motion by a motive power? Are not the lords of creation kept in motion by a motive power? And the man died for the want of air, and the heart failed for the want of motive power. The engine failed for the want of steam, and the pump failed to deliver water for want of a motive power, and every variety of machinery died for the want of a motive power, and the world may collapse from the same cause. Is not the horseshoe magnet in equilibrium, electrically considered, and every molecule of the magnet a perfect magnet, electrically considered? And does not the same principle hold good in all animate and inanimate matter? Is not the electromagnetic principle in stone the life and cohesive principle of the inanimate substance? And would not the destruction of this principle in nature destroy everything animate and inanimate in part or whole in proportion to the destruction of the substance or being? And will not the horseshoe magnet become deranged, or the electromagnetic equilibrium in a great measure be destroyed by dealing the magnet heavy blow with a sledgehammer or otherwise? And would not a person resort to electricity to restore the magnet to its original equilibrium as the most efficient agent? And if not, why not? When a person is in perfect health, are not the electrical conditions, positive and negative, in equilibrium or harmony in every organ or part of the body, like the magnet in equilibrium, electricity considered? And would not a heavy blow upon a person's head derange the polarity and electrical equilibrium of all organs and parts of the body through the nerves, motor and sentient, in proportion to the extent of the injury received by the blow or otherwise? And would not electricity, properly and scientifically administered, restore harmony and an equilibrium in the system as in the magnet? And why not? Can animate matter or a person live without electricities, positive and negative, or north and south polarities? And if the motive power of electricity be great enough to raise a stone weighing thousands of pounds and convey it from the earth to the top of a building 200 feet or more in height, run cars loaded with passengers, and do many other strange and wonderful things, cannot the positive and negative electricities in equilibrium, generated from the air in the lungs, circulate the blood? And is not the physical life and motive power of the body acting in harmony with spirit life? If not, why not? Trance states can only be accounted for by me on the principle that the physical life departs or is divorced from the spirit while the trance lasts. Cause in coordination between the electrical and spirit life produced by the suspension of the physical forces. If not, why not? Theory of the circulation of the blood. A new theory on the circulation of the blood on the electromagnetic principle. The air is taken into the lungs, and with great rapidity is combined with the elements of the venous blood, thereby liberating a great quantity of electricity, which now, as free electricity, takes to the oxidized arterial blood as its conductor, just as in our electrical machines when, by the combination of the acid with the zinc, electricity is liberated, it rushes to the conducting platina plate. The presence of this free electricity in the arterial blood is believed to be indispensable to complete its essential character as arterial blood. The lungs are the great battery of the system. In them, chiefly, the system gets its magnetism obtained from the elements of the venous blood, especially from metals and carbon, by action of the oxygen of the air upon them in the function of breathing. The brain nerves are the agents of or instruments of the distribution of the blood to the system in general. Allow me to ask you to bear in mind the cardinal principle of electrical polarity, that positives repel positives, while positives and negatives attract each other. You inhale your breath as a vital function by the action of the electrical principle sent out from your brain to the organs employed. That breath is full of oxygen. The venous blood in the lungs is composed largely of oxidizable elements as the carbonaceous and the metallic. The inhaled oxygen coming in contact with these elements in the lungs and having a powerful electrical affinity for them combines chemically with them. This combination or oxidation of the sanguineous fluid changes it from the dark venous to the red arterial blood, and by charging it somatically with the magnetism which was liberated in the process of oxidation, makes it strongly positive. But two positives repel each other. The lungs, being constantly replenished and filled with this electricity, set free by the action of the oxygen on the venous blood, are also positive. The lungs, therefore, and the arterial blood repel each other. Their mutual repulsion necessitates and compels their separation. The one or the other must give place. The lungs cannot retreat, and the blood must. Its only course to get away is through the pulmonary veins, and it rushes through them into the left auricle of the heart. But it is yet within the sphere of the mutual repulsion between it and the lungs, and being also crowded along by the succeeding current from the lungs, it is urged onward. The auricle, under the influence of the electro-vital force, performs its proper function, contracting on the blood within it. The blood shoots through the passage down into the left ventricle, where it still feels the power repulsion of the lungs and the propulsion of the advancing current behind. And here also the ventricle, actuated by the electrical vital force, performs its duty and contracts with much force upon the blood. This action of the heart, supplemented and sustained by the forces in the rear, drives it to the extremities of the arterial system. Here the propulsion from behind is aided by the electrical attraction of the capillaries, in the advance of which Professor Draper speaks. Hence the blood is both crowded and drawn forward into these minute vessels. But all along its way, so far, there has been a friction between it and the arterial walls, causing it to part with more or less of its electricity. In the capillaries, this process is completed. The chemical changes there, which, by the way, I think to be really electrical changes, take from it the balance of its oxygen, and with that its relatively positive electricity, and so change it into negative venous blood. Now, its electrical relations to the lungs are changed. Here in these systematic capillaries, it reaches the central point of its circuit. Being now electrically negative, it both attracts and is attracted by the positive lungs. It therefore rushes to them by the only route that it is open to it, that is, through the veins, heart and pulmonary artery. In the lungs it enters the pulmonic capillaries, where it again comes into contact with the oxygen inhaled as an element of the air. By the above-mentioned action of the oxygen, it is immediately charged with electricity, and thus becomes positive again, when the old repulsion between it and the lungs is renewed, and it is again repelled to the left auricle of the heart, driven through it into the left ventricle. Hence it is thrust out into the aorta by the heart's mechanical contraction, and urged on by magnetic repulsion through the arterial system as before. Thus it continues its rounds, on the one side being driven off to distribute through the system its nutritive and life-sustaining freight, which had been received along the veins from the absorbent vessels of the alimentary canal and in the lungs, and having delivered its charge, being called back on the other side by a restless power to the lungs to be freighted anew. Such is the circulation of the blood, and such are the forces as I humbly conceive by which in its circulation the blood is impelled. At this point the question may very properly be raised. What becomes of the electricity or magnetism that is given off from the arterial blood in its passage from the heart through our aorta and the arterial ramifications? A very important inquiry, and one the answer of which should be well understood. This question brings under consideration one of the many beautiful exhibitions of contrivance in the structure of the human body, which proclaim with clearness and force the existence of a conscious, intelligent God, the contriver and creator of all. I refer to the well-known fact that the arteries are invariably accompanied in all their flexions and ramifications by at least single, and much of the way double, lines of closely attendant and intertwining nerves, a fact which is not true of the veins. Now, for what purpose do you suppose is this special nervous attendance granted to the arteries and not to the veins? That at least a single line of nerves should be served out to the arteries would seem to be for the purpose of exciting, by means of the electro-vital fluid, through the nerve filaments that penetrate the arterial issues, those contractions which cooperate with the contractions of the heart to facilitate the circulation of the blood. But for what purpose is this duplicate nerve line that accompanies the vessels containing arterial blood? Most manifestly, as it seems to me, for the purpose of taking up by induction through its filaments which entwine about those blood vessels, that electricity which is discharged from the arterial blood by its friction against the walls of the arteries, and conducting it to the great sympathetic, and thence by anastomosis to the spinal cord and up to the brain, there to undergo some secret elaboration in conjunction with the mind or spirit, converting it into electro-vital fluid to be sent forth again as the vital force of the whole organism. You will remember that the arterial blood is highly charged with electricity, and therefore strongly positive, but when it has passed from the arteries to the veins, it has lost its magnetism and become negative venous blood. This loss is, and must be, largely sustained along its passage, since there is considerable friction there. It is true that the inner surface of the arteries is highly polished, but the same is true also throughout the whole circulatory system. And yet in the capillaries and other small blood vessels, as seen in the web of a frog's foot, there is so much friction that the red corpuscles are visibly retarded in their motion along the parietes, while those in the centre move by them and pass along with greater ease and speed. So in a river, the friction of the water with the banks necessitates a slower current along the edges than in the middle of the stream. Precisely this is seen in the blood vessels. No matter, therefore, how polished are the inner walls of the arteries, there is a friction there with the flowing blood, and the friction must discharge the electricity of the blood throughout the arterial course. This electricity, I doubt not, is disposed of in the manner that I have already stated. Thus I have endeavoured to indicate to you that most admirable replenishing apparatus by which is kept up, in health, a continual and abundant supply of the electro-vital fluid to the system, while every exercise of mind and of body is put forth at the expenditure of this vital element to exhaustion, prostration, and death.